Welcome to the Fusion Note, a weekly dose of breakthroughs, curiosity, and connection. Because the future's better when we build it together.
Absolutely.
I am just so thrilled to welcome you to today's deep dive. We have a truly extraordinary collection of notes in front of us today, spotlighting the Fusion Note's writings on the circle of life, tech, health, and soulful progress.
Yeah, it's a pretty massive topic.
It really is. If you're someone who loves connecting the dots between just vastly different fields, you are going to absolutely love this journey.
It's a remarkable synthesis, really. We're looking at a framework that spans multiple disciplines, but it does something very unusual.
Right.
It takes these highly technical, cutting-edge scientific advancements, things that normally just sit in dry academic papers.
Oh, totally dry.
Yeah, and it grounds them in this deeply philosophical, almost poetic lens.
And that is exactly our mission for this deep dive.
Oh.
We are going to unpack this incredible mix of breakthroughs. I mean, we're talking about everything from regenerative bots and remote surgeries to space agriculture and quantum computing.
Which is quite the list.
Right. But we are going to look at all of it through the writings of the ancient philosopher and poet Rumi. So let me just ask you this as you're listening right now. What do human brain cells playing the classic video game Doom, a biodegradable farming robot, and a doctor performing a delicate prostate surgery from London all the way to Gibraltar have in common?
On the surface, absolutely nothing.
Nothing at all. But as we'll see, they are all part of our rapidly evolving ecosystem. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah, to really understand how these seemingly random data points connect, we really have to start where the Fusion Note starts, which is with that overarching theme of the circle of life.
Right. The notes open with this breathtaking quote from Rumi about the progression of existence. He wrote, "I died as mineral and became a plant. I died as plant and rose to animal. I died as animal and I was human. Why should I fear? When was I less by dying?"
What's fascinating here is the intentional juxtaposition.
Yeah.
The author is placing ancient poetic wisdom right next to hyper-modern, rapidly accelerating technology. And the imagery that follows is just stunning.
It really is.
We get descriptions of the expanding universe, the holding ozone layer, ultraviolet light. The notes detail how trees and plants absorb carbon dioxide into, every single chlorophyll.
And how we answer that action with our outbreath.
Yeah.
It's this continuous biological exchange.
Exact.
They even refer to it as dating nature, treating the Earth and the stars as friends we're basically in a relationship with. But here's the catch. We are living in an era where the sheer volume of information and the speed of technological change can feel like, drinking from a fire hose.
Well, without a doubt.
Yet the writing explicitly advises us to do the opposite of speeding up to keep pace. It says, to begin, stand still. The forest knows where we are. To view, stand still. The stars are dancing. To listen, stand still. The earth sings.
It's a profound reminder. Observation and stillness are prerequisites for truly understanding the progress happening around us. I mean, think about it. If we don't stand still, we miss the forest for the trees. Or in the context of our next topic, we might actually miss how the technology itself is starting to mimic the forest.
Yes, let's get into that, because the tech merging with nature is where things get really wild.
It does.
The notes highlight this concept of biodegradable tech, specifically a new farming robot. But I have to admit, when I first read this, my immediate thought was about the nuts and bolts. We are so used to robots having heavy lithium batteries, copper wiring, hard plastic casings.
Right, e-waste, essentially.
Exactly. How does a robot work a full agricultural season, helping plants, and then just dissolve?
Well, it requires a complete rethink of material science. Instead of traditional plastics and heavy metals, you use biopolymers and organic conductive materials.
Right.
For over a century, our industrial model has been extractive. You take resources from the earth, you build a machine, you use it until it breaks, and then you just throw it in a landfill.
Right.
But this biodegradable robot represents a regenerative model. When its job is done, it quietly dissolves right back into the earth. It literally provides nutrients and returns the favor to the soil.
It is a literal circle of life consumer product. It goes from mineral to plant, just like the Rumi quote. And that blending of biology and technology goes even deeper when we look at the computing side of things, specifically what the Fusion Note refers to as wetware.
Wetware is the perfect example of where current tech bottlenecks are pushing us back toward biology.
Yeah.
Right now, the global microchip industry, companies like TSMC, they're hitting physical limits with silicon. The more powerful the chip, the more heat it generates.
And the more massive the energy grid strain becomes.
Precisely. The human brain, however, operates on a fraction of the power of a light bulb.
Which totally explains the brain cells on a chip. The notes mention human neurons placed onto a physical microchip, actually learning to play the video game Doom.
It's incredible.
And it doesn't stop there. They talk about neurons and light working together in photonic chip processors. This is ultraviolet messaging being used to power autonomous driving technologies and robotic systems so they can learn through real-world interactions.
By integrating actual biological neurons, wetware, into chips, engineers are harnessing millions of years of evolutionary efficiency.
Wow.
But of course, as these systems become more capable of learning and processing, it completely reshapes the human labor market. The writing brings up a recent job analysis report from Anthropic to illustrate this shift.
Yeah, the Anthropic report points out that jobs we traditionally thought of as safe from automation are now highly disruptible. They specifically list roles like the investment analyst, the codex engineer, the perplexity lawyer, and the digital artist.
And we should probably clarify what some of those newer titles mean because it shows how fast the landscape is moving. A perplexity lawyer isn't a human standing in a courtroom.
Right. No suits and briefcases here.
No, it refers to someone whose primary value is using AI research frameworks to rapidly synthesize case law. And a codex engineer is essentially a developer who manages AI coding assistants. Even the jobs created by the AI boom are now being disrupted by the next iteration of the AI boom.
But the Fusion Note doesn't frame this as a doomsday scenario. Instead, it highlights how companies like Lovable and Anthropic recently gave away free credits for Women's Day, specifically to empower feminine ideas and intuitive creative projects.
Yeah.
The author suggests a pivot. If the highly analytical, code-heavy jobs are being automated, the new frontier is deeply intuitive. They mention things like intuition investments, hemisync beats, 5D design, and building personal economy apps for kids.
Those are fascinating examples of where human value is heading. Hemisync beats, for instance, refer to audio technology designed to synchronize the left and right hemispheres of the brain to induce different states of consciousness or focus.
Interesting.
And 5D design moves beyond just 3D modeling to incorporate elements like time and sensory experience into digital creation. It is a massive shift toward the deeply creative and the experiential.
I love the metaphor used here to describe our relationship with all this fast accelerating tech. The writing points out that people are treating AI like someone crying wolf, but then they ask, why are we so scared of the wolf?
Right.
Not everything with a wolf is scary. We just need to know how to create a pack that works together.
Treating technology as an adversarial wolf that is coming to hunt us creates this paralyzing fear. But wolves in nature are highly social, cooperative animals. Our task isn't to kill the wolf or run from it. We need to domesticate it.
Yeah.
We need to integrate these AI tools into a cooperative pack where human intuition and machine processing power work in tandem.
Domesticating the wolf.
Ah.
I love that. And speaking of human and machine working in perfect tandem, let's look at the health miracles detailed in the notes. We're seeing a doctor remotely control a prostate surgery taking place in Gibraltar.
While the doctor was physically sitting in London.
It's completely wild.
The implications for global healthcare equity are just staggering. If you live in a remote area and need a highly specialized procedure, you don't necessarily need to fly across the world anymore. The expertise can be beamed directly to a robotic surrogate in your local hospital.
It's incredible. But I have to admit, my internet connection drops when I'm just trying to stream a video call. The idea of relying on ping rates and broadband stability for a scalpel making millimeter-precise cuts near vital organs is terrifying.
Yeah, that's a very valid fear.
But according to the data in our sources, the latency issues have been solved to the point where this isn't a hypothetical anymore, it's the new reality.
And that level of precision engineering ties into another radical perspective on health brought up in the notes. The Fusion Note mentions a viewpoint shared by Elon Musk regarding paralysis.
Okay, yeah.
The idea is that paralysis might not necessarily be a permanent physical limitation in the way we've traditionally understood it. Instead, it could be viewed as an engineering code problem.
Yes, the idea that to walk again, you might just need to type in, as the text puts it, version 0.0.7. If human biology is seen as an operating system, then neurological pathways are just biological wires. If the wire is broken, you engineer a bypass.
Exactly. If fixing a spine is treated like debugging software, the intersection of a medical doctor and a software engineer becomes indistinguishable.
Wow.
And the pace of these breakthroughs is accelerating across the board. The writing provided a rapid-fire list of medical miracles that just happened, and we really need to pause and appreciate what they mean.
Okay, let's run through them. First, researchers at Texas Children's Hospital have found a promising new pathway to treat Rett syndrome. For those who might not know, Rett syndrome is a rare, devastating neurological condition that primarily affects girls. It takes away their ability to speak, walk, and even breathe easily, and right now, there is no cure. Finding a pathway to treat it is a massive beacon of hope for thousands of families.
Absolutely. And then the notes highlight major funding coming through for a total retinal implant.
That one blew my mind.
Right. We aren't just talking about correcting vision with lasers. We're talking about literally engineering sight for the blind using synthetic implants that interface directly with the optic nerve.
And finally, a huge silver lining for liver transplants, engineered mini satellite livers. I had to look into how this actually works because it sounds like literal magic.
It does.
They essentially grow a secondary miniature liver inside a patient's lymph node. As it grows, it can gradually take over the filtering role of the patient's failing primary liver. It's a biological bypass.
When you step back and look at that list, remote surgeries, neural code debugging, total retinal implants, satellite organs growing in lymph nodes, it really does feel like we are living in a weekly sci-fi movie. But it's all grounded in that same biological drive to preserve and extend the circle of life.
It really is. And to ground us, before we look to the stars, the notes drop another beautiful Rumi quote here. Be like a tree. Stay grounded. Keep growing. Know when to let your leaves go.
That's lovely.
Which is the perfect transition, because to keep growing, humanity is pushing past the atmosphere. Let's talk about MoonBiz 360, science, and quantum leaps.
The scale of human ambition right now is phenomenal. The writing details the behind-the-scenes progress of the Artemis mission. We aren't just talking about planting a flag on the moon again. We are talking about establishing permanent infrastructure.
Village life is how it's described. They're working out how to establish literal paved roads on the lunar surface to deal with the abrasive moon dust. They are researching how to plant and eat chickpeas in space.
Chickpeas on the moon.
Yeah. And perhaps most importantly for the global energy economy, they are making progress on how to mine helium-3.
Helium-3 is essentially the holy grail for nuclear fission. It's a rare isotope that could provide theoretically limitless clean energy without the radioactive byproducts we deal with in traditional fission reactors today.
Which is huge.
Yeah, it's incredibly scarce on Earth, but abundant in the lunar soil. The author of The Fusion Note makes a great point here, hoping that as we build this lunar village and mine these resources, we start from scratch with a clean slate, keeping a greenhouse mentality in the back of our minds.
If we carry our extractive, destructive habits to the moon, we've learned nothing from the Rumi quotes. But the energy piece brings us right back down to Earth. The notes mention that TerraPower has received approval to test their advanced nuclear plant. Energy is the ultimate bottleneck for all this progress, whether it's powering lunar bases or running massive server farms for AI.
We are building literal infrastructure on the moon, but back on Earth, we are struggling with the infrastructure of truth.
Oh, man.
With all this rapid progress, the notes offer a really stark warning. The scientific community is currently being flooded with fake journals and reports. Old research is getting a new AI spin to look like original breakthroughs.
If AI can perfectly mimic peer-reviewed scientific literature, how do we find our way through this dense forest of information? How do you know if the paper you're reading about satellite livers or biodegradable robots is even real?
This is a critical epistemological crisis. The text points back to the poet David Whyte's advice on standing still, using stillness as a measuring system to find your bearing when the map is constantly shifting. Interestingly, it also suggests that the soul or the electromagnetic field might be just as valid a compass, asking if the mystical intuition can hold equal weight when the digital world becomes deeply untrustworthy.
It's a trippy thought, relying on your gut intuition when the hard data can be faked with a prompt. But speaking of data, here's where it gets really interesting. The notes introduce a massive leap in computing power. We were talking about the quantum decryption race.
Yes, the introduction of a newcomer algorithm known as JVG. To understand why this is sending shockwaves through the tech world, we have to look at how cybersecurity works. Much of our modern digital security is based on the idea that standard classical computers cannot easily factor massive prime numbers.
Right.
It would take them thousands of years to crack standard encryption.
Right, but then came Shor's algorithm, which proved that a quantum computer could mathematically break that encryption in a fraction of the time. The catch was that running Shor's algorithm would require an estimated 1 million stable qubits. Since the most advanced quantum computers today only have around 1,000 qubits, the threat felt decades away.
Exactly. 1 million qubits is a massive engineering hurdle. But this new JVG algorithm, according to the notes, completely bypasses that hurdle. It allegedly requires fewer than 5,000 qubits to do the exact same decryption. Now, the Fusion note makes a very clear point of noting that this paper has not been peer-reviewed yet.
Yes, huge grain of salt required, especially given what we just discussed about fake scientific journals. But, as the author says, as a signal, it holds quite the superposition.
Even without peer review, the signal is indeed massive. It tells us that the timeline for quantum supremacy, the moment quantum computers can outpace classical computers in breaking global encryption, might be vastly shorter than we thought.
Oh.
Going from needing 1 million qubits to just 5,000 completely rewrites the roadmap for cybersecurity.
It changes the timeline from decades to potentially just years. From the moon to quantum realms, it is a lot to process. Which brings us to the final section of our source material, a segment they call the Did You? Quick Hits. It is this wonderful, eclectic, rapid-fire synthesis of modern life.
It really captures the sheer variety of inputs a curious person deals with in any given week.
So let's unpack these, because they tie everything together. First, the writing asks, did you listen to Lenny's podcast this week? They suggest his format might be the way forward for consuming information. 1/4 podcast, 1/4 AI, 1/4 old books, and 1/4 X.
It's a recipe for a balanced intellectual diet. If you only consume AI-generated content, you lose the historical grounding of old books. If you only read old books, you miss the cutting edge of platforms like X. It is about not getting trapped in a single echo chamber.
Next, they ask, did you feel paradoxical? They point to Sahil's list of paradoxes. The growth paradox, the knowledge paradox, the money paradox, the opportunity paradox.
Which is your favorite?
Oh, the knowledge paradox for sure. The more you learn, the more you realize you don't know. It's a great reminder that linear logic doesn't always apply to human progress.
And then there's the hardware side of progress. The notes mention the new low-cost $599 Apple MacBook Mini, specifically positioned for what they call an OpenClaw station.
OpenClaw.
Yeah, OpenClaw refers to an open-source framework that allows users to run powerful AI models locally on their own machines, rather than relying on big corporate clouds.
That's empowering.
Very much so. Paired with this is the mention of a new privacy tool called Spectre, designed to ensure no digital tools are eavesdropping. It highlights the tension between utilizing advanced tech and protecting our autonomy.
We want the wolf in our pack, but we don't want it listening to all our private conversations.
Exactly.
And then we get this amazing visual. Did you see the little robot mice sent into the Hadron Collider? The Hadron Collider has these incredibly tiny freezing tunnels operating at minus 271 degrees Celsius.
Freezing doesn't even begin to cover it.
Yeah. Humans obviously cannot go in there for maintenance. So we send these little robotic mice, the text calls it a Cinderella use of all, pairing up our technology to go where our biology simply cannot survive.
It's a beautiful example of extending the human senses through machinery. We build the mineral to explore what the animal cannot.
And right after that extreme physics, the notes pivot right back to the soul. They ask, did you land after the eclipse last week? They recommend nervous system regulation through handpan music to process all that post-eclipse cosmic power.
Which is a nice shift in tone.
Yeah, and finally they ask if you watched the movie Mufasa. It actually inspired the author's whole circle of life piece. The core concept of he lives in you, whether that means prior family members passing down biological DNA, the ether, the plasma, or even digital source code. The echoes of what came before live inside the current iteration. It is such a comforting, profound thought to wrap up on.
It's an incredibly elegant synthesis. The Fusion note takes all these disparate threads, the hardware, the software, the biology, and the poetry, and weaves them back into a single tapestry.
So what does this all mean? We've covered Rumi's ancient poetry, biological farming robots dissolving into the soil, human brain cells playing video games, remote surgeries spanning from London to Gibraltar, lunar chickpeas, the crisis of fake AI science, and quantum decryption algorithms. On the surface, it feels like chaos.
It really does.
But the genius of today's deep dive is showing us that these aren't isolated events. They are all just different facets of the exact same overarching circle of life. We are mineral, we are plant, we are animal, and now we are silicon and quantum states. It's all connected.
Which brings us to a rather provocative thought, something for you, the listener, to mull over as you go about your day.
I love these.
As we've seen in the Fusion note, our cutting-edge technology is becoming increasingly biological. We have human neurons powering computer chips to solve silicon's heat problems. We have agricultural robots that literally biodegrade back into the soil to feed the earth.
Right.
So the question becomes, At what point does human technology stop being classified as artificial and simply become recognized as the newest, most complex branch of nature's own ecosystem? If we are made of the earth and we make the machines, aren't the machines just an extension of the earth itself?
Wow. That completely changes how you look at the device sitting in your hand right now. Is it artificial, or is it just the newest branch on the tree?
Something to think about.
What an incredible deep dive today. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey through the Fusion Note. Keep observing, stay curious, find your moments to stand still amidst the rush, and if you haven't already, take the author's advice and check out Rumi's Book of Love. Until next time, we'll be here, ready to unpack the next great stack of ideas with you.